Welcome to this session on working with the United Nations. Welcome everyone. My name is Nora Landheer. I work at SANFO on outreach and recruitment. So we try to do lots of networking events like this one, inform you about working opportunities with the United Nations, and also do some sort of pre-selection and recruitment for the United Nations. The United Nations, it's quite a beast, if you want so. There are many different organizations. The one we have invited today for this panel discussion are the 5 you see on the screen. These are considered focus organizations for the Swiss Agency for Development and Cooperation, SCC. And these are the ones we at SANFO work closely with, we partner with. Here you have the speakers. So the way we coordinate today's event is that each of them will present briefly their organization, their recruitment needs, etc. And then we'll have a panel discussion and take your questions. So make sure you ask all the questions you have. That's the moment. Ask difficult questions, the more interesting it will get for all of us. I'm very pleased that for this time, that's new. Compared to last time, we have UNV on the panel as well, United Nations Volunteers. They work a bit differently. They will explain to you. So they deploy different United Nations volunteers to the remaining 4 organizations. So I'll ask you to pay particular attention to that organization. All right. Can I ask UNICEF? We'll start with UNICEF. Thank you very much.
Wow.
Okay. You can see.
No need.
No need?
Okay. Thank you. Hello, everybody. How are you? This is full of people, and I'm very pleased to be with you today. My name is Elena Dominguez. I'm Regional HR Chief for UNICEF, for one of the 7 regions that we try to divide the map of the world, which is all the Eastern European, Baltic republics and independent Commonwealth of states. I'm here very pleased to be with you and to explain to you a little bit what we do in UNICEF. And Nora has told me you have 5 minutes, so therefore I'm taking this very seriously, and right now I'm looking at the clock. So I'm going to make it succinct. In UNICEF, you know that is one of the oldest agencies. You know, we started in 1946 after the Second World War to protect children from the unfortunate, disgrace that all Europe went through. And then the organization has expanded in helping children all over the world to keep for children's rights. And right now we are in 190 countries globally. When you think about UNICEF, we need to look at an organization that is field-based, and only the 15% of our staff are in HQ, what we will say headquarters locations. The great thing is that we arrive to places where no one goes, because also there has been this long-standing relationship with governments all over the world, and this allows to reach the most deprived children and also vulnerable children, which is the focus of work. Now, if you think about joining UNICEF, what do I need to have in mind? Well, think of a child who needs to survive the first 5 years of life, and they need food, yes, they need health, they need water, they need someone to protect them, and they need education. And of course, they need to get protected in a number of areas like HIV, etc., etc. So this is going to give you a span of the basic programming areas that we work on UNICEF. Now, around that, there's a myriad of people helping us on advocating for child rights, on human resources people like me and others, to make sure that we advocate for the children's rights. Now, depending on the country where we are, sometimes we need to focus on just children to survive. And in other countries, when those things can happen already, perhaps the focus might change into how do we ensure, for example, that they have and reach the adolescence, or how do we make sure that those adolescents, for example, in the country, have a play into the future of that country. So, as you can see, with all this span of business, we need a lot of talent, and I'm sure that in this room is full of that, yeah? So therefore, thank you so much again for being here and for listening. I wanted to let you know as well that one of the things that not only me, I think I'm speaking for my colleagues here, that we have is in the UN we have diversity, which means that we all come from different backgrounds. And I would like to swear here in front of all of you that this is not about to, because some people were asking me this morning, do I need to have the perfect English? Do I need to? And you know, it's about how each of us can bring the collectivity into the diversity work that we do to achieve results, in this case for children, but it can be from other UN agencies here as well. So if your English is not so perfect, go ahead, no issues. Mine is very Spaniard, I'm still here. There. If you think that you coming from the private sector is not going to be okay because I don't know, well, I come from the private sector, it was 10 years even before thinking that one day I wanted to do something more meaningful. Well, it's true. I had to start a little bit from scratch, even though the private sector was managing a lot. I started with a consultancy because it was the only way for me to get in 1 month, 3 months, 6 months, until one day I was able to prove, hey, I can make a difference. And I got a position. There are many ways of entering the UN and accessing the UN. And good news is that there are opportunities at the entry level, at the mid-level, and senior level. And you will see how surprised you will see how UN volunteers get on those senior levels. So my colleague is going to explain that later on. But I want to bring you this idea that your background, your personality, the way you want to do this in a team of people very different from you is an added value. So if you see that it's long, take a lot of time, and you need to prepare well, but you are very motivated, don't give up. Don't give up, because you can make it. Yeah? So that is quite important. Make sure that you prepare your CVs in a way that don't tell us how many things your supervisors told you to do. Tell us, what did you achieve? What did you contribute? What was the difference? Even at the very junior level, I'm sure you did a lot. And when you do motivations letters, don't copy-paste, please. I read all of them, I swear. And I can know a lot about you, and I admire people who put some heart in what they are telling us, because you are telling me, I really care. Yeah. So my invitation to you today is that if you do care, we will care too. Yeah. So let's have the partnership together. Thank you.
Thank you, Elena. I would now like to invite UNFPA, Victoria Fernandez. Thank you. Oh, no. Oh, yeah. So Elena's staff has prepared a nice presentation, which we will upload. We share this at the end of this presentation, where we will upload our presentation, so you get to see all of this. So this is about UNICEF. Getting there. Okay, here we are. UNFPA. Thank you, Victoria.
Thank you, everyone. My name is Victoria Fernandez. I'm from UNFPA. I apologise, my voice is going now somewhat after talking for 2 days solid now, so hopefully you can all still hear me. So I look after branding, sourcing and outreach at UNFPA, which is about the longest title of anyone in the UN system. But in short, I look after talent acquisition and making sure that we can fulfil key talent needs across UNFPA. I do have a colleague down there as a backup in case suddenly my voice completely goes. So Karen Nico is down there and might have to jump in. So for those who don't know about UNFPA, we're the lead agency in the UN who looks after women in terms of making sure that every pregnancy is wanted, every childbirth is safe, and every young person's potential is fulfilled. So we have quite a broad mandate in that we look after young people and women's rights from a sexual, reproductive and family planning perspective, and make sure that they have access to both information and also appropriate health services. We do a lot of work in the policy and advocacy space, advising governments around population data. So UNFPA, for example, does the censuses for most of the major cities across the world countries, and provides information around migration and trends and things as well. Recently, and I'll highlight a little bit more about that, we've moved more into the humanitarian space. So we were traditionally a development agency, but what we've seen is that more and more countries are sliding into a fragile context or full-blown humanitarian crisis. South Sudan, for example, the Yemen are two very recent examples that we've seen of that. So UNFPA is on the ground in about 150 different countries. We have about 4,000 staff, including contractors. Our headquarters are in New York, but we have regional offices similar to UNICEF and our other sister agencies. And we have offices, as I mentioned, in around about 150 countries. We're a very gender balanced organisation, so we have about 52% of the organisation is female to about 48% male, which is a little unusual in the UN system, but I think given our mandate around sexual reproductive health and family planning, maybe not sort of so surprising. So just to give you a little bit of an idea around the types of roles that we recruit for in UNFPA, we obviously are a very technical organisation, so we look for skills around things, population, around economics, around statistics. From a reproductive health perspective, we're looking for sexual reproductive health specialists in the youth space, maternal health. So at the moment, still up to 800 women are dying every day giving birth across the world. In UNFPA, one of the key things we do is helping make sure that births are safe. So we're very proud to say that number has halved over the last decade, but it's still far too high, as we know. Gender-based violence is a key gap for UNFPA. So right now, in terms of the profiles and things that we need, and particularly in the humanitarian situations, about 50% of the roles that we're looking for are actually from gender-based violence. So we're really looking for profiles from that perspective. We also do some work in the HIV and AIDS space as well. We work very closely with UNAIDS and the UN Cares programme, which is actually housed in UNFPA. Monitoring evaluation, so obviously making sure that what we're doing in our programs is effective is key. So monitoring and evaluation is also a key profile for us. But I really wanted to emphasise the operations side. So many people feel that UNFPA is just a technical organisation, and that's true. Many of our specialists are technical, but the operations side is also really key. So we're always recruiting for finance and budgeting experts, human resources, which is the division that I belong to, IT, audit and oversight, procurement, and information management. So we do have many of these functions housed in our headquarter locations, but also within the field as well. So just to talk a little bit about some of the trends in UNFPA recruitment. So we have a number of different roles that we recruit for and ways in which we recruit at UNFPA. We are recruiting on an annual basis throughout the year. So in terms of our leadership positions, we have what's called the leadership pool, which is an annual call for applications for 3 key positions. So our country office representatives, our deputy country representatives, and our international operations managers. And we're happy to talk more about these afterwards. I'm aware of a very short time. We're also heavily involved in the resident coordinators space. So UNFPA is a key support of getting resident coordinators who work across the agencies and coordinate efforts to bring the agencies together, particularly in humanitarian situations. UNV, we are a very proud partner of UNV, and we have around about 200 UNVs in our organisation at the moment. We heavily promote it as a great way to get experience within the UN and contribute and to see whether coming into the UN is something for you. I know I personally come from private sector, so I know I've met a lot of people today who are looking to make the transition, and I would really encourage you to speak with the UNV colleagues about that as well. Consultants as well, so we do consultancies. That's another good way of getting into the system. I think my colleague from UNICEF mentioned that often you can work your way up through consultancies into taking on a longer term role. And finally, the junior professional officers. So our colleagues at SAMFO manage that programme from UNFPA's perspective, and we have a number of GPOs within the organisation, which we can again talk a little bit more about. My colleague Karen Nico, who's here, manages that programme. So as I mentioned before, just some of the key areas that we're really looking for at the moment are around gender-based violence profiles, humanitarian as well. We're really building up our humanitarian rosters. So we have an external roster which we do a call for, and which we encourage you to apply. The next time that will be probably early in 2017. particularly French. So we have a Swiss audience here, and many of you speak French, is a real asset for UNFPA because we have definitely gaps from that perspective. And a willingness to serve in the hardship duty stations, and that's something that's very key for UNFPA. We are a field-based organisation, and more of our work is in hardship and non-family duty stations. So if that's something that you're willing to do, then we really encourage you to apply. Just lastly, some quick tips and tricks. So all our jobs are advertised on the UNFPA website. We do highlight the importance of networking from the UNFPA perspective. I know many of our colleagues, a lot of the opportunities come through discussions and networking sessions. So we do recommend that you come to these forums where we can meet you, where we can talk to you about your CV. Really look to understand what the organisation is looking for and see what the gaps are in your profile. So is it that you don't have the volunteering experience, or perhaps you don't have the international field experience? Is it that there's a language gap? So look to see really what the specific organisation you're looking for is highlighting, and see where you can try to address that through various mechanisms like UNV or like language classes. Just wanted to highlight that we do have a video. Our HR director, Michael Emery, who is a celebrity in the UN circuit, has recorded a competency-based interview guide on YouTube. So I would encourage you to have a look at that if you're interested in interviewing for the UN, because many of the agencies also work with competency-based interviewing. And we do a couple of global career fairs. There's a UN virtual career fair, which I think is coming up in December. We also do another virtual career fair twice a year as well. So keep an eye out on our UNFPA page, also on LinkedIn, where we have latest news about vacancies. So I think that's probably me. So I'll stop there. Thank you.
Thank you, Victoria. Thank you very much, Victoria. So next one is UN Women. I'd like to welcome Julien Pelot. Merci.
Thank you. Yes, it's a man for UN Women. Hi, everybody, and great to see so many of you here today. So I'm going to tell you a little bit about UN Women, but I'm going to start by telling you a little bit about me. I'm the Strategic Planning and Operations Advisor in the Office of the Executive Director at UN Women. I deal with corporate planning, setting priorities for the organization, and executive management, so supporting our Executive Director and Deputy Executive Director in their tasks. And there is a bit about my work experience on the slides, but there are two things I just want to highlight to you. First, I'm Swiss, and we don't have enough Swiss people in the UN, so Sanfo is working very hard to change that, but we do have some, and I'm one of them. And I've worked in several organizations, started with UNFPA actually as a UN volunteer in Kyrgyzstan. So which was actually, that's the second thing I want to tell you. It was a UN volunteer position funded by the Swiss Development Corporation, SDC, and that was recruited by Sanfo. And that really allowed me to get the exposure and the experience I wanted to be able to grow in the UN and move on to other positions. So that was a really great experience, and I recommend all of you to look into that. So UN Women is, we've heard UNICEF is one of the oldest entity. UNFPA is kind of a middle-aged entity, and UN Women is actually the youngest entity of the UN system. We have been created only 5 years ago to promote gender equality and women's empowerment. There were different entities. You may have heard of UNIFEM or the Division of the Advancement of Women. So all these entities were merged into one larger, bigger entity, which is UN Women. We're working to achieve gender equality and women's rights by 2030. That's our new target with the new development agenda. And we work in a number of areas, as you can see on the screen. One thing I just want to highlight is that we're a little bit different than the other entities in the sense that we have a triple mandate. So we have programs. We're present in 96 countries, and like UNFPA or UNDP or UNICEF, we deliver programs. We work on development as part of the UN country teams. but we also have a normative support function, and that means we support intergovernmental negotiations in New York. We work with the Security Council, with the Economic and Social Council, with the General Assembly and its various committees. We have the Commission on the Status of Women every year in March, which is the second largest UN meeting at UN headquarters, with more than 4,000, or about 5,000 last year, participants coming for that big event. And we also have a UN coordination mandate. We have a role in making sure that these guys are working for gender equality and women's empowerment, and that when their programs deliver for children or for sexual and reproductive health or for development, they also deliver for women and girls. So that is, in a few words, the focus of our organization. Trends and developments and challenges in recruitment, I think you've heard from others. It's very similar for us. Maybe just to mention more specifically on Switzerland, that one of the challenges is that we actually receive very few applications from vacant posts from Swiss nationals. I know you're not all Swiss here, but for those of you who are, it's, as you can see, only 0.5% of the total applications that UN Women receives are from Swiss nationals. And the other big challenge is also the lack on gender equality issues. We are the agency that works for gender equality, so we need people who can bring the gender perspective into issues. Gender equality is very broad, and you don't need to be an expert in everything, but you need to have the ability to look into what does that mean for women, and how does that impact women differently than men. So that is something that we look for in most of our profiles. And I'm not going to repeat what our colleague from UNFPA mentioned, because it's very much the same in terms of the profiles we're looking for, and you can see them also on the screen. Applying successfully, I think for us, maybe you can again see some points on the screen, and I just want to mention one in particular: customize. We receive a lot of applications that frankly could have been the same that you have sent to UNICEF or to UNFPA or UNDP, and that you're just sending us. And we can see that immediately. So, and even within an organization, it's not that you should have your CV for UN Women and your CV for UNDP, but you should actually look at the position and try to find the keywords in that position and try to reflect these keywords in your letter of motivation, but also in your CV. And so I've done, now I've been in the UN for about 12 years. I've done hundreds of applications, and every single application I did specifically for that job. And that often can make a big difference, because when we're scanning, typically at UN Women, we get about 300 applicants for each position. So the first cut is very quick. We try to look, does the person meet the minimum criteria, the number of years of experience? But what we look for mostly is these keywords. Has the person read the terms of reference, and does he or she have a genuine interest in that position? So that would be my main advice to you in that context. So thank you very much, and look forward to your questions afterwards.
Thank you, Julien, for sharing that insight. Next one is UNDP. So I would like to welcome Jean-Luc Marcelin. Merci.
Good afternoon to all. It's great to see so many people here interested in our activities. I'm not sure I'm really needed, because everything has already been said, and I totally agree, especially with the comments related to customizing your application. We'll get to that in a second. We were asked to say a little bit about ourselves. I work for the JPO Service Center based in Copenhagen, and actually I'm a former junior professional officer myself. So if you don't know about the JPO program and you're under 32 of age, you may want to have a look at it, because Switzerland actually has rejoined the program last year, and it's a great entry door to the UN for younger talent. And I deal with external relations and partnership activities, mainly with donor governments, but also with partner agencies. We try to work jointly on some projects and activities. I also do quite a lot of interviews, so that's why I was really interested in hearing my previous colleagues' comments. And please feel free afterwards to ask questions to us on very practical questions on interviewing and applying and all that, because there's so much to learn from practical comments. UNDP, United Nations Development Programme. I don't know how familiar you are with this organization. It may not be the most famous organization. However, it's one of the largest in terms of field coverage and presence. We are in close to 170 countries, so basically in all the developing world and quite a few other countries where we have donor liaison offices, for example, to do resource mobilization. And our main focus is the eradication of poverty, and within this idea of sustainable development, within this idea of making sure that no one is left behind. It's one thing to have economic growth, it's another thing to have it spread out throughout the society, gender-wise, minority-wise, region-wise, for example. So UNDP works hand in hand with governments to help them and guide them and advise them and also take lessons from them sometimes in making sure that whatever activity related to poverty reduction, related to sustainable environment, related to crisis recovery are being made in a manner which allows not to forget anyone and which allows to make progress in a sustainable way in the long term. We all know that as of today, the way we use our planet is not sustainable. However, we just continue, we run even faster. We want everyone to achieve what Europe has been achieving. And we all know the environmental impact, all the issues that are faced related to that. So we try to mitigate this situation by trying to suggest a more sustainable way to promote development. In practical terms, the type of profiles we're looking for, typically people who have studied political sciences, international studies, people who studied environmental studies, gender studies, lawyers as well. All these type of profiles are into UNDP. However, and as my colleague from UNFPA, Victoria, was saying, we also look a lot for positions in operations. UNDP has a huge amount of activities related to procurement, related to implementing the activities of other organizations in the field. So people who come with a slightly different background and also a private sector background are very interesting for us. In terms of trends, there are really two recruitment streams in UNDP, internal and external. Today I'm going more to focus on the external positions because many of you are here to want to join the UN. When it comes to applying for regular positions, it's all centralized on the UNDP job site. So it is sorted by topics, it is sorted also by regions. So it's easy to see whether or not there are some positions which are more related to your field. And I would like to suggest that you actually, even if you still do not have the experience related, it's always interesting to look at job sites of the UN organizations and to see what is on the market. Because if you want to reach a position, you first need to build it up, and you will have maybe to, like in chess, you know, to plan 2 moves ahead and to see, okay, I want to work in this. So what do I need to achieve that position? And then you wind back and you fill the gaps with other types of experience. In terms of challenges, I believe it was also mentioned earlier, we definitely have a need for French-speaking people, if possible not from France. That would be nice for a change, because we have a lot of activities in Western Africa, among other places. We also are very much present in Arabic-speaking countries, and we have difficulties in finding Arabic speakers. So that's also an interesting niche for those of you who speak French or Arabic. Hardship duty stations, I mean, it may not be of interest to everyone, but if you apply for a position which is based in New York, you will have 200 applicants. If you apply for the same position, if it could be exactly the same, in Somalia, you may have 10 applicants. So I know not everyone wants to go to Somalia, and this is also some sacrifice that it requires from your private life. But if you want to step in, that can actually be a smart move, because then you start gaining some experience. I'm talking about UNDP, but I do believe it's the same in other organizations, and basically in every organization which has a field presence. So you can also be a little bit strategic there. Maybe not Somalia, but then let's take Mali, or a place which is slightly less sexy, if I use that word. Did I use that word? Yes, sexy than New York. Very good. Also, it's, as I was a little bit saying, it's very important to build your career beforehand. A lot of people come and say, I'd like to work for the UN, and then we ask, but okay, what do you have as an experience? And maybe they either don't have experience yet, or have a lot of experience which is really not related to what we work for, what we work on. So once again, it's a little bit of making a little bit of intelligence work on the net, and to see what type of profiles we're looking for, and to see whether, if you're from the younger generation, what would be the next steps in your career to make sure that then you gain the 2-3 years of experience that will allow you to jump into a regular job with the UN or UNDP. Or if you're more towards mid-career, okay, what type of profiles, what type of expertise are needed? And then, well, I probably have a lot of that in my toolbox, but I may be missing field experience. I worked 10 years for financial institution, but always in headquarters. So maybe I should try to find a position which would help me bridging by gaining that field experience that will more often than not be required by the UN system. The UNV program was mentioned on several occasions. Here I mentioned youth UNVs, United Nations volunteers, but UNV can be at any age. We actually have people who are towards the end of their working life and who want to give back to the community. That's also a way to gain experience, field experience, among others. Lastly, we were asked to give you 5 tips about how to apply successfully. I believe many of them have already been covered actually by my colleagues, but first of all, please do apply for positions you qualify for. We receive a lot of applications which actually more than half of the requirements are not filled. Well, it's nice, and it's always nice to try, but don't be surprised if you don't get it, because mathematically speaking, we probably have someone who will fill all these requirements. So let's be strategic. Instead of applying for 50 positions, you may want to apply for 5, but 5 where you really have put an effort in your application and where you know you're the closest to the profile. That's quite important. Also in terms of venting your frustration, your frustration out. And actually venting also our frustration. When you get a position, an application where it says, it's always been my dream to work for the World Bank. And it's like, I'm UNDP, I'm not the World Bank. They didn't even check what they were writing. Then there's a problem. It really, where's your motivation there? So that's really, it may sound basic, and yet it's nearly systematic that we have that issue. Also, you may want to do your homework, especially if you go down, if you manage to be shortlisted, maybe to be interviewed or to pass some tests. But even before, you have 2 shots when you start, the cover letter and the CV. So let's make sure that these 2 shots are used wisely. If you say, I want to work for UNDP because I'm interested in your mandate, that's nice. But if you say, I'm applying for that position because I believe I can bring this and I believe that position is really important to solve this and that, then suddenly you're shining a bit more. And at the beginning, we can only take it from what we read. So that's quite important. Do your homework. Know the job description upside down. If there are a lot of acronyms you don't know about, Google them. Try to find someone who knows about these acronyms maybe, and who can help you understanding better what is exactly it is about. That's really, really important. Then CV writing, cover letter writing, interview techniques, it's all on the website. We mentioned the HR director of UNFPA who actually did a training course available on the website. If you Google even further, you'll have the questions actually for the positions, believe me. But it's not because you have the questions that you give the right answers. You also need to have the examples to substantiate these answers. It's all online. It's also a lot of technique. It takes time to learn these things, but CV writing in the UN it may be different from CV writing in Switzerland, for example, or in other places. So it's important to do your homework also there. How is it? What's our lingo? How do you adapt to it? Lastly, it may sound a little bit strange, but you actually have a certain number of people who apply for positions, who get the job, and who actually decide not to take the job. This is really not good. We don't have a black book, but if we remember your name, you'll be on our little black book all the same. So please, 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 don't apply for positions you're not willing to take. I know things may change. Suddenly, you can suddenly have change in your family life or your private life, which changes things. But people who say, "Well, I realize it's too far from my spouse or whatever," please think about that beforehand. You're wasting your time and ours. So that would be great. But beyond that, I'm a bit provocative, of course, on purpose here. But beyond that, also do consider what would that mean for me in terms of moving. If I move to Somalia, if I'm a woman and I move to Somalia and I would have to work in an environment where basically I would have to prove every single day that I'm as good a professional as a male, for example. How do I tackle that? Am I fine with that? Some people love the challenge. Some people hate it. I don't know if there are Scandinavians here. Scandinavians love flat structure, hierarchy, and all that. They go to the UN and then they have layers of hierarchy. Some can't take that. Fair enough. But try to talk with colleagues beforehand, just to have a better feel of the way things work. Yes, I do believe that was it. A few very practical tips and also slightly provocative tips. But from all the questions we've been receiving this morning and until now, there's so much talent, there's so much interest. It's overwhelming, and it's also very humbling for us to listen to so many of you who want to work with us. So thank you so much for that. It's a pleasure to be here. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Jean-Luc. So the last presentation, finally we get to United Nations volunteers. Thank you, Sandra, for being with us.
Thank you very much for your warm welcome, Sinfo, and for inviting us to present with the big brothers and sisters here. Well, if I can change that. Yeah, my name is Sandra Legray, and I'm Recruitment Associates in UNV headquarters in Bonn. I've been myself in UN system for some 20 plus years, and I started as a national staff in peacekeeping mission in Croatia during the war in Croatia. And after that, I moved to be an international volunteer. So I have some 2.5 years of experience as an international UN volunteer in Timor-Leste. And since 2003, I am working in volunteer recruitment section, which is responsible for recruitment of volunteers for all of those agencies who are sitting here and many, many others. Oops, sorry. What is our organization mandate? Basically, our mission are twofolded. One is to promote volunteerism, pursuing the integration of volunteerism across the legal policies, legislation, and programming, as well as delivering on international agreed development goals, SDGs. We are, through our volunteers, mobilizing our volunteers. We are advocating for volunteerism and civic engagement and peace and development. And finally, it's the area where I'm coming from. We are doing mobilization of volunteers and mobilizing volunteers to enable people to be directly involved in humanitarian, peace building, and post-conflict recovery, as well as sustainable development and poverty reduction work within the UN system. Just to tell you, I mean, my colleagues already presented where you volunteers are working with those agencies who are sitting here. Just to tell you a little bit more on what we do in Bonn. We maintain UNV Global Talent Pool. We currently have about 100,000 potential candidates who are interested in volunteering. And maybe for you, I will focus a little bit more on volunteers who are serving internationally abroad. We have several modalities, international specialists. We have national volunteers who are serving in their own countries. We have youth volunteers. We have short-term assignments. Most of the agency which presented today worked with volunteers, and we have volunteers with them and big numbers. My little slide here, I don't know if you can see it, just to give you top 10 main partners of UNV. The majority of volunteers we have, which is more than 2,000 volunteers, we have with peacekeeping operations, DPKO. We have lots of volunteers with UNDP. We have almost 1,000 volunteers with UNHCR, which is refugee agency, and some others, including the agency which are sitting here with us today. They talked about how volunteers are actually involved in their programs and projects. What I would like to highlight today here is the areas in demand which are quite frequent and maybe of interest to you. We are looking for protection officers to serve with UNHCR, but also with UNICEF, child protection officers profiles. We are looking for program officers who are serving with UNDP, UN Women, and other agencies. We are looking for civil engineers. We are looking for medical doctors, etc. Most of these profiles are across the board with all the agency, and currently we are struggling to find bilingual profiles, which is something which we need to improve, and I would strongly recommend you, if you're interested in UNV assignment, to apply and register. To be an international specialist, you would need to be 25 years of age and have at least 2 years of experience in that particular field. So again, I'm echoing what my colleague from UNDP said. Make sure that you apply for the right assignment, not for any vacancies just because they are there. Think about it before you're applying, because it's not easy to go in some difficult duty stations, and we have assignment in South Sudan where you have to live with 1 bottle of water and shower with that as well. So make sure that you do your work before you apply and you understand exactly where you're going. I will not talk about that too much because it has been already said by my colleagues. But should you be interested and you would like to volunteer, you will need to create your profile online. To do that, again, as Jean-Luc said, make sure that you prepare. Don't just copy and paste your job description and put in there. Make sure that you use all the available space you have for information, and be specific. If you're applying for a protection officer, make sure you indicate your experience in the protection, you put your achievements which you have in your previous work, you put your skills and competencies there so they are clearly visible. In UNV Bond, we are maintaining the big database, which currently have more than 100,000 applications. For us to find you in that database, it's very, very difficult. And we do our search based on certain criteria, but also based on these keywords you put in your application. So the better you prepare your profile, the more chances you are to be picked up and shortlisted. We are shortlisting candidates for all these assignments which we are receiving from different agencies. We are not selecting you. Selection process is done with the host partner, host agency, who then continue doing the interview. Most of the time, as my colleagues mentioned, they're using a competency-based interviewing. So make sure that you prepare in advance as well, do some homework in terms of how to present yourself, because they will be looking at your past experience and they will try to predict your future behavior based on past experience. And of course, being volunteering organization, we would like you to include your volunteering experience as well. Volunteering experience is counted in your experience, so-called professional experience, so it is beneficial to you in terms of getting a chance to be shortlisted to include the volunteering experience. And that's who we are. We are Inspiration in Action. I would like to invite you all to visit our new website, which was just launched 2 weeks ago. It's very simple. It's not the same as the old one, which Julian would probably... it was a bit difficult to apply and register and to search for the information. So thank you very much for coming, and thank you very much again to SINFO for inviting us.
Thank you very much, Sandra. We have 7 more minutes, and I don't want you to miss the last presentation upstairs that closes today's event, the forum. So very briefly, 2 sentences on what SAFO can offer you. We heard a lot from actually all of you, how important it is to prepare your application. And once you're gone through the first stage, then prepare for an interview, which with the UN is mostly competency-based. So we do actually offer that particular training. So it's a one-to-one session that we can offer to improve and prepare you, help you prepare your application. You find that information on our website, and you can register through that website too. So I would now like to invite all of you to come to the stage, and we can take a few more questions before we then unfortunately have to close this session for today. Okay, so I'll take this first question here.
Thank you. I have 2 questions. One is on the recruitment. Why isn't there one specific recruitment website like Inspira? We've been seeing Inspira, but then we see there's UNV, okay, which is different, and then there's also UNFPA. And second is, when you go as a UNV, what are your tips for transitioning into a professional life?
The one UN?
Several questions?
No, I think that. Yeah, just answer this one. Yeah. Would like to take the one UN?
Okay, so I don't know why we don't have one single website, but you know the UN is slowly moving towards integration. So maybe one day we will have a single website. Maybe the HR colleagues can comment on that. But I think at the same time for us, it's also important to get people who have a particular interest in your organization. So if you apply, you know, for UN Women, it's because you are interested in our mandate, which is to promote gender equality and women's empowerment. And so, you know, you would take a particular interest in looking at our website and not just the jobs page, but you know the extent of work that we do. So I don't know, that would be my take on it, but I think the HR colleagues can reply more. As I was a former UN volunteer, and I have to say that you know, as a UN volunteer, I have never been treated as a volunteer. I have always been treated as a full-fledged professional. So actually, I didn't really see the difference between transitioning from volunteering into a professional position. I think the difference is the spirit. You're not going there with the full package of benefits and salary that you would go in a normal UN position. So it means that you're making a certain you know, sacrifice to a certain extent to give something to the community and to give something to and also to gain experience. So it's really a win-win. But actually for me, being a UN volunteer has really allowed me to get the exposure I needed in the UN, and then after that I had the experience I needed to apply for a position and to move into a more, let's say, a standard career path. So in that sense, the transition was fairly easy.
Thank you. I just wanted to add to, in terms of professional experience, all our volunteers, I mean, we have currently 6,000 volunteers serving around many UN agencies. All of them have at least 3 years of professional experience. All of them work in the same level. If we have a human rights officer with a peacekeeping mission in Congo, he works along with the human rights officer who is deployed by OHCHR or peacekeeping mission in Congo. The only difference is they receive different contract, but they have different motivation. Those volunteers, they have different motivation. And definitely those experiences they have and exposure, as my colleague said, is benefiting them for the future purpose of building their career in UN system.
Okay, thank you. Maybe in the interest of time, I'll take 3 more questions and then.
Because if you're as a UNV, for instance, where I was a UNV in Bonn. I'm no critique, but it's the reality is UNV, and if you want to work, have the experience, they say that the experience as a UNV is only counted as 50%.
No.
That is
no,
what
no.
we've been hearing in the field.
That's
This
not,
is-
not
And
true.
second is that UNV Bonn, once you, and they set a certain minimum requirements. One of them is you should not be in a UNV assignment, and you have to be out of the UNV assignment for minimum 6 months to be eligible for recruitment.
Maybe just because we are closing soon, I take 3 more questions and then we can also answer that one.
Very quickly, neither of those are,
okay, good.
true,
Yeah.
from certainly from UNFPA perspective, but I think all the agencies.
Well, the specific.
But this is
This
quite
is
specific. Maybe we
specific,
can
sir.
take this up bilaterally afterwards. This is
Yeah.
specific rule for one of the organizations, but that one is not present here today. Yes, please.
Okay, my question is there any way or any appreciation for taking initiative as an applicant? Is it possible to write an application or to go with an idea, I would like to work on this, I can contribute that to your organization? Does that strategy work at the UN or not at all?
Well, I can tell you, coming from the private sector, when I wanted to enter the UN, I tried that myself, you know, and I then understood that it's not manageable. It's huge organizations, and they have specific needs, and this is why it takes some time to also create those vacancies, to want to say, I need this type of work. Of course, you can contribute with a number of things, but it's how can you resolve the issues that we have here and to advance an agenda. So it's the other way around, is what are the needs and how can I satisfy them? So my suggestion, because I made that mistake myself, it was not a mistake, it was nice to do, you know, I felt very well afterwards, but it's not practical.
Okay, other question?
Yes, excuse me, over here. Well, after your presentations, you make it seem so easy to access a job in the UN. I believe in reality it's not that easy, and I think there's a really big gap in the sense, well, the requirements are always higher and higher, and I'm especially thinking now for all the entry-level positions and youth. There's a big group of people, of young people who are really motivated in working in the UN and unfortunately often end up in this internship, non-paid internship loop. So do you have any suggestions on how to get out of the loop? And is there, well, I'd like to hear your position on that. I would like to add actually reply to, I can't remember your name, sorry, from UNICEF. When you mentioned diversity, well, actually, in the interns group, the diversity is not at all respected in the sense, well, 80% of interns actually come from OECD countries and developed countries. And so there's very little diversity, actually, because many other countries aren't represented. So I would like to hear your response on that. Thank you.
To understand that in the UN, the internship is people going to an internship are going to do a practice. They are not UNICEF staff members yet or UN members yet. But you see, one of the, and I think it's a debate and it's a reality that we need to increase diversity. One of the things that I have learned through my career is that diversity is more than what it says in your passport. Diversity is also that you have, for example, studying at a local university, that you can bring a different thinking. It could be that you are in the private sector and you are practicing some things that other people don't have. And I think on that, you know, I still have my hat from the private sector, and you're right, we need a lot to do to make that happen. I firmly believe that we are making progress, and one of the things about working of the UN is that sometimes it's like a big dinosaur to move forward on things because it's huge, it's big. But you know what? I'm fully convinced that if we keep doing that and we try to always look at the motivation letters of people, to look where you study, what is different on you, we will get better every day at picking up people. I can tell you my commitment is full on that, and I do not give up any day of my work. Now, we are huge organizations, so therefore there will be moments in which that will not be achieved. It's quite important also to understand that many people have this idea that the UN is only for a certain group of people. And reaching out other colleagues or other people in universities, in types of work, you need to convince them always, you know, that no, it's normal people who work in this office, you see, you can also be part of it if you wish to. So I think that we also need to reach out more to those circles that are not so used to the UN, so we are able to communicate to people that the UN is comprised of human beings from all over the world, that's it. And we can get better at that. So there is recognition of your comments, but also commitment that we are moving forward, you know, to overcome that challenge. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much.
Can I just add something on that? Sorry. I don't think it's easy to get a job in the UN, so don't take me wrong. I think the volume of applications that we receive is really bigger than you can imagine. Sometimes I'm really surprised myself, you know, even for UN Women, which is fairly small and less known organization. I mean, the amount of applications that we receive from very qualified candidates is very big. And in the end, there is a selection process where we need to narrow down to 10 people for a written test and 4 people, 5 people for an interview. So the cut is quite harsh. Having said that, I think for entry-level professionals, one thing that I think is really important is flexibility. When I started in the UN, I was ready to go anywhere. And I was ready to go anywhere on any contract. And before I got a position in the UN, I've been a UN volunteer, I had consultancy contracts, I did multiple internships. So it does require a little bit of time and investments to be able to build the experience you need to get a position and to get a position in the country that you want. So I think, you know, I completely agree with you. It's not easy. It's a difficult path, and you know, it takes time. But I think flexibility is really important at the beginning, and to have this that is part of the job. That is the nature of the organization. So that's something the organization cannot change.
Okay, thank you. I'm sure there are many more questions. We unfortunately have to close this session.